Susie Q. Take me out just real slow, like a 10-second drive. Smooth. Has anybody seen Mick Boogie? Anybody? No? Do you guys know what happens today? StyleCaster's Volume 5 of Sounds from the Front Row, our Fashion Week mixtape, goes live. I want to see you all download. It's like all the things that you guys get excited about StyleCaster, and then it's like all those like little things. The tote bags and Sounds from the Front Row and our JTM program, I would say, are my 3 favorite things about StyleCaster. So first, before we get into this panel, I'm going to apologize to this young lady in the red pants who I absolutely knocked over and her water went flying. So I'm sorry about that, which leads me into my next story about I was outside. So at StyleCaster, one of our isms is, we call it being high level. It's from one of our investors, Dan Gilbert, talks about having a high level of awareness. So like the highest compliment you can get at StyleCaster is either A, you're an animal, or B, you're extremely high level. And I was outside, and there was another spillage behind the check-in desk. And I heard immediately somebody from the 9th Century goes, "We got a spill. Can we get 5 people came fly. A guy dropped out of the ceiling to clean this up." So it's partners like this, like 9th Century Y, Ford, whatnot, that make these events so special. And it's really an honor to work with these guys. So next panel, I know these guys are back here. For all, who in here considers themselves a fashionista? Who in here considers themselves a self-loathing fashionista? You guys. All right. So we're going to flip this thing on its head for a minute. That last panel was the real deal. I think you guys can tell from my enthusiasm. This is another end of the spectrum. These guys right here are the Rossis and the Tom Florios of the ad tech space. And it was important for us to include this aspect of it. My assumption is not all of you guys are that up to date on the world of ad tech, the technology, the big data plays that are going on in the space. But when Albert and I started StyleCaster and Sociocast, our vision was that the future of media was data and technology. I will tell you that the smartest person I've ever met, I am honored to say is my best friend and business partner, Albert Azout. He will tell you the smartest people he's ever met are these guys. So you guys are in for a treat. Mr. Neal from Empirica, our research partner who put together the inaugural State of Style report, which I all encourage you to take a look through, is going to moderate this. Mr. Darren Herman understands the media landscape and the implications of data like no other. My aforementioned friend and business partner, Albert Azout, runs what I believe is going to be the next great ad tech company in New York City, in Sociocast and the things that they're doing with big data. And then his mentor to his left, someone I'm very proud to now announce that StyleCaster has a partnership with Joe Zawadzki, CEO of MediaMath. We just recently collaborated and launched a new product called Style as a Service. These guys, this is the most amount of brain power. Is Henry Sims out here? I'm going to go out on stage. This is the most amount of brain power this stage has ever seen, and I know what the 92nd Street Y has in terms of brain power. So with that, all that I ask is just take the words and twist them a little bit for all of us that don't understand your guys' huge vocabulary. What do you think?
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, yeah, well, this is going to be exciting, I think, partly because we really are going to be talking in the next 30 minutes about what is a new frontier in marketing, and that's the trend for media buyers, agencies and brands to rely more on big data sets and a kind of quantitative analytic approach to engaging with consumers. And I think we can see this trend across the kind of full cycle of marketing. So you see it at the initial market research end, which is where I work as a consumer psychologist, but you also see it right through to the kind of design and placement of an ad in front of the consumer, which is where these guys deploy most of their energies. So as Ari said, we're really lucky to have 3 genuine pioneers in that area to talk today. Albert Azout, who's the CEO and founder of Sociocast and a co-founder of StyleCaster. Darren Herman here to my left, the Chief Digital Media Officer of MediaKitchen. And over there on the far right for you guys, Joe Zawadzki, the CEO of MediaMath. And what I'm going to do is start with a question for all of you guys, and that is to kind of emphasize the commonality across all of us. We're all kind of in the business of using data to try and make the most accurate predictions about what consumers are going to do, what they're going to read, buy, what they're going to talk about. And so we invest a lot of energy in telling stories using data. So if we could just go around, and if you guys could say in your businesses and the approach you take, what does that process involve? What does it mean to tell the best story you can from the best data?
So there's a couple of facts we know, which is the first one is the world's becoming increasingly more digital. You can't really argue that it's becoming any less. Phones aren't going away, computers aren't going away, tablets aren't going away. And so digital as we know it as consumers are on the screens. They're your television screen, they're your computer screen, they're your tablets. And more media channels or media touch points are becoming digital. Your books, your radio, your new phones that you're buying, your out-of-home billboards, and things like liquid paper. So there's going to be a lot more digital touch points that we have in the future. And so we talk a lot about data, but data's scary because data means a lot of different things to many different people. And for most people, they don't want to care about data. But the one thing we do know, based on the fact of the world becoming digital, there's going to be a lot of data exhaust that comes out of that. When things become digital, it means we can track things. We can serve things in a matrixy type of world. And when we can track and we can serve, we can learn many things on how consumers interact. Very similar to how people on the stage earlier were talking about footprints within stores and changing out clothing based on consumer behavior, we can do that exact same thing online or anything that's digital. And so what we're doing with a lot of our brands, such in the fashion world, such as Giorgio Armani or Armani Exchange or NetJets, which I think is a fashion brand, even though it's a luxury travel brand, is we're learning as much as humanly possible about data and about consumers. And the great thing about it within the digital context is that what we can do online will be any survey that we can do in a store or we can do in person, because the amount of people that we can learn from is so much greater. And so based on the fact of the future becoming increasingly digital, we can learn a lot more. And it's not just about the optimization of ads. It's all about what we can learn about the consumer, how their buying habits, the trends, and then put better product or better services in stores or online.
Yeah, so from our, obviously we have Sociocast is a big data company, and we believe a lot in data. And really, I think big data is the key word that people talk about today. I think it means two things for us. The first is that the data sets are quite large. So like Darren said, the amount of addressable devices creating data is just enormous. It's a huge data exhaust, data explosion. That's sort of the first thing. The second thing, which even makes it more tricky for technologies to interact with these sorts of data sets, is that they're rapidly evolving. So just like in life, the trends are sort of changing at all times, so data as well reflects those changes. So those two things make it quite difficult for systems to really understand how to leverage and exploit data sets to the best of their ability, especially in advertising and media. So at Sociocast, that's really what we do, is we look at, I think right now we're about 250 million users monthly across about 50 billion or so different behavioral events. So enormous amount of data that we can apply specifically right now to display inventory, display targeting, but we believe that this will go into other areas as well and across multiple channels. So for us, data is really about understanding users, predicting what they're going to do, and creating and constructing audiences for marketers to interact with, at scale.
Yeah, so I think that the way we think about data is as almost an ingredient. So if you think about what marketers are trying to do is really connect with consumers, and consumers are looking to sort of discover and uncover things that might be interesting. And where we see the big opportunity in sort of digital and digital marketing is in this concept of, if you think about the media that's out there right now that, to both Darren and Albert's point, is increasingly becoming digitized. There's 17, 18, 19 billion impressions a day, and if you include Facebook and other sort of social channels, a lot more. And all those things are sort of digital touch points between marketers and consumers. And if you think about the data that's available, around that, it's really about can I marry those two things together, the media and the data, in order to make good smart marketing decisions. This ability to connect with consumers and understand who are they, what might they be interested in, how likely are they to respond to my ad or my message, and then you start thinking about not just using it for for marketing and for acquisition, but really for merchandising, right? So for current customers, what else might they be interested in? Right, and really think about the web as a distributed storefront. This idea that you don't have to wait for people to come to your website or to show up at your retail location, but you can really use this this vast distributed 25, 30 billion impression a day opportunity to reach consumers where they're at, right? So really bring your brand to them, and then obviously to use the data exhaust. I like that expression to really glean insights that might inform product going forward. Right, so you're seeing particular users that are relevant and are interested. You'll also find users that aren't. And in that are gems of opportunity that you can sort of uncover and decide, hey, we can do something different, right? The Zara model of putting it in market first and then quickly, rapidly innovating. The web can provide that opportunity for lots and lots of brands because your supply chain is digital and real time as opposed to physical and offline.
So Joe, let me ask you, so one of the main developments that you've been involved in is the demand-side platforms, like MediaMath. Can you give us a sense, first of all, for the uninitiated, what is a demand-side platform? And then give us a sense of how targeted now you can get in putting a message in front of a consumer at the right time. I know you've talked about this as sort of using a rifle instead of a shotgun. Yeah. How focused is that process now through the demand-side platform?
This is a live telecast, so it's really targeted, and that's often a little bit scary. Obviously, all anonymous information, but the ability now is, if you think about the media that is digitized across display, so the banner ads that show up on websites, online video, things like YouTube, social through channels like Facebook, mobile through devices like phone and tablet. That combination of channels also carries with it the ability to really very precisely identify audiences and say, based on the fact they're on this site, based on the fact that they've interacted with the brand before, based on their geography, based on their inferred income or what have you, you can really very precisely identify populations. I won't say individuals, but populations that then you can predict how much should I pay for the opportunity to reach those folks. And that ability, when you think about a traditional media planning and buying process that many folks here might not be familiar with, but in general, you buy media in order to in blocks of millions online, where you're really targeting 20 or 30 sites. And the reason why you're targeting those sites is because some portion of those folks are interested. Right, so you're a guilt group, and you may want to buy Esquire because it's likely that folks that are on Esquire might be interested. Right, in a digital environment and using things like a demand-side platform, which is again MediaMath in the business that we're in, you can go the other way. So you say rather than buying a site in order to reach an audience, you can either reach that audience directly by connecting media to data, right, or go all the way to saying here are the business results that I'm trying to achieve. Right? As a marketer, I'm trying to sell product, or I'm trying to upsell or cross-sell existing customers, and I'm going to let a machine, basically artificial intelligence for marketing, figure out across those billions and billions of impressions and those tens of thousands of data points what I should be buying in order to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish.
And what Joe just said is extremely important. It's actually a renaissance that's been going on within the advertising industry over the past 4 or 5 years or so, which is flipping the planning model on its head. By a show of hand, how many folks have planned media before? Bought or planned? Okay, there's a few. Good. So in the planning of media, we like composition. So we look at audiences, a specific target audience. We map that to a periodical like Condé Nast or GQ or Esquire. And if the audience is a high composition on that particular media vehicle, we make a case to buy it. But us as media folks have tolerated something called wastage over the years, which was there's a percentage of people that were reading that media vehicle that were not part of the target that we were trying to reach. Now, one can make the case is we can influence that target, but a lot of time the target has absolutely no business buying the product or service that you're trying to sell. So what Joe and what Albert have built out with their respective companies is the ability to flip that model on its head. Start with the consumer and work your way back to media. And so let's only go after the people that we think are within the target and then overlay them across a network or a single publisher and serve our messaging or creative or whatever the message is to that particular user. And it flips the model on its head. We're seeing major shifts in media dollars and allocations out of the historical way of planning into sort of the new way of planning. And this also allows us to understand who's interacting with our creative. And that's important because there's a lot of consumer insights that can come out of who's interacting with our creative, who's interacting with our websites, who's interacting with whatever experiences that we're putting out. That informs up and down the value chain of whatever company you're working with, as sort of Joe was talking to.
Yeah, one of the things that when we first started looking at the industry, specifically at Sociocast, trying to figure out what we were going to do, and we saw what was happening in the space that Joe's in, the demand-side platform space. What we found to be very, very interesting was that you're not only are you real-time decisioning on users online and display, but you're able to what they call decommoditize the bid and really look at an individual user at a specific point in time. And if you can overlay data in that process, you can be much more informed, not only in how much you want to pay for that particular placement, but really who you want to target and what the effectiveness is. And this will all lead to just better ways of attributing what's working and what's not working. So that was actually great. And really, even from the publisher side, StyleCaster launched Style as a Service in conjunction with MediaMath. And it's been great because StyleCaster can not only look at its own audience, which lives on StyleCaster and its properties, but looks at other ways of expanding that audience set to people that look like those users, and then leveraging the inventory that's out on the web to actually service them. So there's so many opportunities just to create this equilibrium in the marketplace and to think of new ways to build revenue models as well as to really just build new infrastructure around how to best reach people online.
Let me just ask a follow-up question to that, to you guys, specifically about how your companies interact with agencies developing the creative. One knee-jerk reaction that I guess you could get sometimes is this is a very kind of by-the-numbers approach, right? That you're inserting mathematicians and computers into a creative process that used to be done by instinct. How do you react to that? What's your experience of whether you guys diminish or add to the creative arc?
I mean, it's certainly additive, right? And I think that it's the marriage of, I think, that art and science that is actually where magic will happen, right? It historically has been the creative process. You've sort of started there, but then really gotten mired in the execution, right? If you just think about the process of going out and picking up the phone, negotiating sites, thinking about developing creative, and you might have the resources to do 2 or 3 or 4 treatments, and that sort of one size or 6 sizes needed to fit all. And sort of the media buying and the analytic process has actually stifled creativity in a lot of cases because you spend much more of your budget on the labor designed to get distribution and sort of get it out there, right? Literally down to like designing flash ads or designing video ads or what have you. And what science and technology and sort of math are doing now is, I think, really freeing people up to be able to think, right? They sort of rise above the execution, and it becomes the fact that if you can log into a user interface, right? We call it a Bloomberg terminal marketing, which finance audience plays real well. In this one, I don't know. It's like an E-Trade, I suppose, right? The idea of being able to log in and sort of push a button and make something and place the buy and execute. And so that concept is revolutionary in media and marketing, where you can do that. And if you're able to, then suddenly you can say, look, I can reach 17 billion people or 17 billion impressions with the touch of a button. I can design creative that have tens of thousands of iterations. There's this concept of dynamic creative that basically says, let me put into the system the broad sort of a template of creative and offer and call to action and different product feeds and categories. And instead of pre-configuring what I'm going to show everybody, I'm going to take advantage of what I know about folks in terms of designing the creative in that moment. So if it turns out that I show up and I'm Gilt, and unfortunately for my credit card bill, Gilt Noir, it will know that I am and will present the right relevant husky-sized clothes for me. If I'm right, and that's pretty cool, right? I don't have to waste an impression on something that I'm not going to buy. So that concept is really, I think, transforming the media buying and the marketing process into something where people can sit above it and really think, who are all the people I'm trying to reach? What are all the different messages that I want to deliver to them? And then again, leverage the underpinnings of technology to take care of a lot of the groundwork.
Initially, I thought you said hussy-sized, but
that too.
Darren, let me turn to you. And obviously, one of the implications from this is that the metrics that we use to sort of measure the success of an ad campaign change and become more nuanced. And a lot of media buyers, right, are still investing in response to ComScore numbers, but there's much more to kind of media value than just that. So what's your approach to measuring the value of content in ways that perhaps go beyond ComScores?
So loaded question because there's about 50,000 answers to that, and we don't have enough time for all of them. Within the fashion category, I'll stick to that. So within fashion, some of our clients like to use digital to create engagements because the engagement and the purchase decision with the particular brand is going to happen in store. So how can we create as many engagements online that lead to positive brand engagements that we then can measure back to the store? So that's everything using sort of location vectors, everything from looking at simple things like Foursquare all the way to newer things, though not new, is Pinterest. And so looking at engagements across all of those. Some clients have e-commerce sites, and so all of the media tactics and strategies that we'll use will drive directly through to the e-commerce site, and we'll measure literally down to a product sale, or more importantly, margin. Some of our clients have thousands or millions of products within database, and they don't want to sell products that they're out of stock on. And so we have to manage not only are we selling products, but are we selling the right products at the right margin, and how do we manage that? So there's not one right or wrong answer to say how do you measure, but the one fact that we do know is every dollar that we're investing within the media landscape is having some sort of measurement placed on it. No longer are the days of putting a dollar in and saying half my advertising budget's working, but I don't know what half. That's not a good answer anymore, and if your agencies are telling you that, please call me. But you need to be able to measure, and doing things for the sake of doing things is not a good answer. So putting in the right infrastructure to measure is ultimately very important.
Yeah, I mean, we're big fans of direct measurement. I think Dave always says, passion sells, data wins. It's very important to be able to really tie the actual effectiveness of media to some event. And Comscore is obviously a great organization trying to understand, what is the measurement that advertisers are looking for, but there's so many other ways of doing things. And if you can really understand how things are attributed, that if I run this here, this will convert to a sale, and you can track it through. And there actually are companies now, Catalina or some of those companies out there, that actually you can match up against a lot of stuff that's happening in the offline sales, and really tie it to retail, especially in fashion. So if you can really tie those data sets together, that's going to be a win.
When Albert and I go out drinking, this is what we talk about. All right, so now is the time.
Talk about your love life.
None of you want to hear about that, I promise you. It's very complicated. Okay, so hopefully you guys all feel smarter. You can just tell people you went to an Ivy League school now like I do. But we have 8 minutes of bonus time for these guys. Again, their knowledge of this space in some areas that you probably don't touch on a day-to-day basis is extreme. So please, go crazy. I'm still waiting for that person to jump out of this. Just jump. Just make it dramatic, though. Like, pop up. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Hi,
You talk and then I'll repeat it so everyone can hear.
Okay, so I'm
Just kidding, we have a mic.
okay, with all the trends evolving in digital media marketing, everything that's happening that we're discussing today, what do you guys think is the most important thing to be a successful social media marketer?
So when the world evolves digitally, it brings in this concept. Wasn't built by me, but let's say it was like BASF. It was innovated better, which is this concept of the universe, which is spelled YOUNIVERSE. And so we're going to get to this universe state where everything becomes personalized. The products you buy, the shirts you buy, the socks, everything you can, as a consumer, can potentially personalize. Not everything, but a lot of it. And so as a social media marketer, you're right in the thick of that. You're right in the thick of potentially millions of conversations that are going on about your brand. Now, a lot of times those questions aren't geared towards you as a marketer. They're geared towards two other people, and you're watching the conversation. So the biggest question that you have is, when do I participate in those conversations? And the only reason to participate in those conversations is if you can add value. If you could add value to those conversations is probably when you're going to have a good shot at creating sort of a positive brand engagement. I don't know if many of you watched the Super Bowl this weekend, but Toyota just got bashed throughout the press. Wow, I'm glad this is Ford, because I wasn't thinking about that. So Toyota just got bashed in the press over the last 24 hours because they created this entire social media engagement model, which they just inserted themselves into millions of conversations without actually adding any value whatsoever. And from a social perspective, probably not going to work, and however much they spent in that has had much more negative effect. But the biggest thing that we tell our clients is only participate in social when you can add value, and the value you can add comes from everything from an honest dialogue to content that you're creating for the social space, B-roll footage, videos, photos that haven't made it out to the books or wherever else.
I was really worried for a second that there'd be no chance we'd get a standing ovation. After that, I think we doubled our chances. Just encouraging.
Well, I'm just signaling to these guys. David Gold.
Yeah, so you guys probably all waited Sunday to see the Super Bowl. This is like my Super Bowl. You guys are being there, but it's a two-part question. First, Darren, can you talk a little bit? There's a lot of brands that touch brands in the group. Can you talk a little bit about what this shift towards data means from a brand perspective, in particular, focus on how do you educate brands on what this means for their business, and then to you guys out there, to everybody, can you just talk about a thing that's always awe-striking to me is this scale and how important this movement is. Can we just maybe touch on that from your perspective in terms of how revolutionary this should be for the entire ecosystem?
So,
Are you going to read it? Yeah, you.
I forgot the question.
Yeah, me too. No, it was two parts about what what are the implications of this, these innovations for brands, and how do you communicate to brands the value of that? And then the second part of the question.
Do you want to talk about how you're educating brands on the importance of data?
So sort of what I said in the opening was most people don't like data. If I liked data, I wouldn't be 30 pounds overweight. I mean, I look at the scale, and it shows me I'm obviously going in the wrong direction. But I attribute that to 2 kids later and commuting. But it's true. Most people do not. Most people do not like data. Most people are not quantitatively bent. And so the data organizations in brands have historically been siloed off. And it tends to be the finance group or the product planning group or groups that employ people with MBAs or potentially PhDs. But the trend of everyone having access to the same data sets that were once siloed off is happening. And it happens with all of us with our consumer spending. If you ever linked your credit card to Mint or any of the online websites to manage your credit cards and finances, there's actually this really awesome statistic I heard 2 years ago at South by Southwest. The people that link their credit cards into Mint actually never return. There's a high propensity of people that link their credit cards in to see their spending because they're in denial. And when you start to see the numbers, you're in denial and you don't want to look at the data. And so what we say with the brands now is, okay, you can't ignore it, but not everyone needs to be able to pick the numbers apart. Not everyone needs to be a statistician or someone that's deep in the numbers. But we have to understand what it means. So even at a liberal arts school, I didn't go to Ivy League school, but I went to a total liberal arts school.
I didn't either.
My liberal arts school was all about in the sense of you don't need to understand the numbers, but you need to understand the insights. And so you can hire people to do the numbers-based stuff, but if you're ignoring insights, then there's a problem, and that's a business problem. And brands that are embracing data, again, a couple people can work and sift through the spreadsheets, but the bigger opportunity is to take what's in those spreadsheets and turn that into insight and turn that into product, turn that into customer service, turn that into something to move the business forward.
I think we'll be surprised at the speed of change, right? So I think we're at this moment now, and a lot of the the techniques and the tools are becoming more evident. I think when we look back 5 years from now, this will be the way that marketing happens. I think a big reason for it is that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the use of data was limited to the backwater, right? It was direct mail was one of the purviews that you could actually use data and see it and execute on it in real life. Certainly print, television, the feedback loop was much slower, very limited ability to do any targeting, right? A couple of concepts, real-time binding came out and applied to about 4 pages of magazines per year. And what's happened now is a lot of those barriers have disappeared, right? So now the ability to use data, right, both to glean the insights, right, the Hadoops and the Netezas and the Green Plums, right, these technologies that basically make it really, really easy to slurp all this data in and do something with it, and then the ability to use that in digital at scale suddenly represents 20-30% of a marketer's media spend, and everyone knows that everything's becoming digital, right? You're seeing digital out of home. We're seeing Apple TV. We're seeing Google TV, right? Huge channels that measure billions of dollars of media spend are now becoming dataizable, if that's a word, right? They're being actionable. You can use data. And what that's doing is it's totally flipping, to Darren's point, the channel on its head, right? Suddenly the addressability and the measurability portion of your plan doesn't represent single digits or 10 or 20%. It's quite the opposite, right? Now suddenly the things that are measurable and addressable and targetable in real time become the core of your marketing, right? And the unaddressable stuff, right, is the spoke. It's the stuff that hangs off the core, and that's going to create a huge shift in terms of the marketers that are using that well are going to be incredibly successful. The folks that are resisting, right, will be on the periphery for a while, and then 5 years from now, everyone's going to look back and it's like, of course, that's what we had to do.
Yeah. And if I can just quickly add, I think another interesting application for this is in market research, and that's where we do our work. And we've used Albert's data, so the Sociocast data, and as you said, that's an enormous data set. It's 200 million by how many affinities are you tracking now?
We have about 1 million different terms.
Okay, so that's a big Excel file, right? And so our job as a research company is to essentially set up profiles of consumers for the State of Style report, profiles of consumers who are highly engaged in fashion, and compare them to the average consumer, the mainstream consumer. So you have those two kind of profiles, and then you can very easily look at how those two groups of consumers compare across thousands of different affinities and millions of data points. It's an incredibly rich data set. It allows us to then filter out the kind of key findings, which can be things like what are the lifestyle activities where fashion-engaged consumers are significantly more invested than mainstream consumers? What are the varieties of wine that they're searching for and looking for more online? What are the music? What are the TV shows? So there can be a process where you can take an incredibly complex, rich data set like that, filter it down to what's very simple, actionable, and unique data that you couldn't get from any other market research technique. So I think it's very powerful.
All right, guys, we got one more, but there's somebody. I love the enthusiasm because your hand is so high. I'm just going to say, I like staying on this stage because it actually makes me feel smarter. I think it's osmosis. Stand up and yell, and then we'll try and repeat it. You must be a PR marketing person because you actually just turned away the mic. Super interesting question. So the idea is that you're in PR and marketing. These guys are experts in data and digital media buying. And the question is how does that transition? Obviously, we're focused on the digital data. How does it get back to traditional media buying? Interesting question.
So way back when, we used the analogy sort of above the line and below the line in advertising. It still carries it through today. And then in the 90s, we went to sort of online and offline, and that's sort of how we were planning and buying. And today, sort of what the MediaKitchen's been using is sort of this axiom: paid, owned, and earned. And irrespective of whatever media channel and media vehicles you may be buying. So how do we create a plan and blow out a plan across sort of the paid, owned, and earned landscape? And that becomes increasingly important because it's agnostic of the channel. And sort of when you can make all the channels work together, that's when it becomes totally amplified. So meaning that if it's just Google search or just Facebook, then it's just Google search and just Facebook. But when you start to add in print, out-of-home, television, and all of those channels work together, not with separate messaging and separate stories in individual places, but when they work together, you can amplify it all. And then the other vision is sort of digital isn't a channel in the future. So digital becomes an enabler. In many ways today we think of digital as a channel because it's the only way to get to Yahoo and Google. But by the next 2 or 3 years, when every TV that you guys have in this room also can get to Yahoo and Google, digital is not a channel, it's just an enabler because you're viewing it now on a TV screen. So how do you in PR or you in marketing outside of media react in that world? I think the world's your oyster because now you have all these channels that are enabled by digital and you can communicate anything you want across those channels.
If he silenced you guys, then that must have been a good
Well,
comment.
he hides his 30 pounds pretty well.
You wear the weight well.
Who's your
You're not even
tailor?
wearing pinstripes. Guys, the smartest guys in the room. Thank you. All right, so I have a quick thing that I just came up with off the top of my head because sometimes I think. So what I want all you guys to do, my challenge to you, is I want you all in your programs it not only lists out the speakers, but in their bios it also has their Twitter handles. I want you to tweet at StyleCaster the people that you guys like the most, because we're already talking about September. There's rumors about taking this thing across the pond in September. So I want to hear from you guys who you guys are enjoying the most, who you want to hear next year, so we can start working on that tomorrow. With that said, you now have 20 minutes to do that. Our very own DJ Susie Q is going to light this room up. For some reason, I think there's a typo in the program, which I apologize about. It actually says break featuring music by DJ Susie G. It's actually meant to say dance party featuring music by DJ Susie G. So enjoy the next 20 minutes. I'll see you guys in a few.